I grew up in what could appear from the outside to be a normal, upper-middle-class family in suburban Los Angeles. But my family was actually very dysfunctional. A family with dysfunction typically engenders circumstances and feelings of isolation in the children. In this context, communication with the outside world, through literacy of some sort, became an even more important tool in my development as a child and as a person than it would have been in happier circumstances. Literacy has come to be understood as a dynamic ability in society. In recent decades, its definition has been expanded to recognize that the ability to extract and generate meaning can be applied in various contexts. I was fortunate to discover literacies of various types that I could use to increase my interaction with the world and become connected to people rather than isolated from them. Each literacy was an entry point for me into the world. I read a classic of English literature like Of Human Bondage by Somerset Maugham, and its story, about a young man struggling to overcome the literal and symbolic handicaps of his childhood, was like discovering a mirror wherein I could see some of my own challenges reflected in the concerns and sensitivity of someone else. I also discovered popular music and its lyrics that were often concerned with personal and adolescent struggle. Its message of misunderstood youth and their yearning for a sense of belonging was something that I could identify with and which aided me in forging my own identity. The manner in which literacy helped me find my personal identity has a parallel in my professional identity as a music teacher. I see my teaching role as facilitating the literacy of my students so that they can discover and develop their own identities. Since literacy is dynamic and not limited to reading and writing, the literacies of my students could come in a multitude of forms. Just as the literacies of my youth ranged from games to music, theirs can involve a plethora of experiences and activities in new or old media. But the foundation of this diversity of communication is made of 4 key learning skills that must be allowed to develop in students in order to prepare them for the 21st century. These skills are critical thinking, creative thinking, collaboration, and communication. When I began having opportunities to collaborate more with my peers, I began to grow as a reader and writer. The collaborative elements of the fantasy role-playing games that my friends introduced me to in 5th grade engaged me in a social process that enhanced my learning by giving me a sense of community. These paper and pencil games, which involved a lot of reading in a context close to a young boy's heart, swords and sorcery, were the low-tech precursor to the computer role-playing games that captured the imagination of scores of young people later on as part of the new digital literacy. My friends and I gathered in someone's bedroom, with an older brother becoming the referee or dungeon master, as it was called, of an elaborate fantasy world based on medieval legend and the Lord of the Rings novels. This multi-generational experience involved a fun type of cooperation that generated a sense of belonging. Literacy in the discipline of music takes on a form that is separate from but similar to normal reading and writing. Music students need to learn the specialized language of music notation, which adds pitch and varying duration to the parameters involved in written and spoken language. Oral learning skills are also emphasized because the student needs to be able to identify sounds by ear in addition to being able to read the visual notation. For these reasons, the study of music is often seen to enhance the linguistic and mathematical abilities of a student. But beyond these cognitive improvements, students are also challenged in the study of music to develop creative thinking in order to be truly musically literate. This thinking involves the search for an apt representation in sound of either one's own inner emotional world or thoughts, or those of the composer whose music is being performed. Both of these activities inform one another, as learning the tools of expression used by a composer enhances our ability to find the musical means of our own self-expression. The creative thinking process in music thus challenges the student to discover his or her unique identity through musical literacy, just as one can be challenged to express their thoughts in any of the other literacies. Literacy in the field of music, at least of an advanced nature, is not really required for a student to be successful in the 21st century. While the current demands of employment invariably require proficiency in traditional reading and writing as well as in the new digital and media literacies, one could conceivably survive without any musical literacy. But I think that life would not be nearly as rewarding. As William Shakespeare noted in his play The Merchant of Venice, "That man that hath no music in himself is simply lacking something essential." I believe that we owe our students, as part of a well-rounded education, the opportunity to discover what music could be for themselves. As we provide our students with the tools of literacy to fulfill their unique needs and find their unique voices, it is also important that we train them to think critically. They need to be able to recognize the power connected to language, literacy, reading, and writing, as well as the reasons that certain voices can be heard more loudly and certain stories get told more frequently. We are bombarded with myriad points of view in our daily lives, with these points of view often being disguised as objective information. The ability of our students to think critically and with discernment will allow them to discover and separate their own true identity from the babble of voices. My own life experience has been fortuitous in discovering literacies that have enabled me to find my true self and connect with a community. From an isolated boy in a faceless suburbia, I've become an engaged member of the musical community as well as of the human race. The particular details of my life story are unique to me. As a teacher, I hope to enable students to become literate in whatever ways are necessary for their own unique development. A safe and supportive learning environment is of paramount importance in making it possible for a student to find his or her path, as well as an awareness on the part of the teacher of the differing literacy experiences and learning requirements of students depending on their socioeconomic class, culture, linguistic background, cognitive mode, funds of knowledge, or adolescent phase. Just as I was able to address the challenges of my own early life through the acquisition of literacy, I hope to enable my students to triumph over whatever challenges they will come to face in their lives.